Cool. So first, just thank you for being open to this. The This has been something that's been on my mind for at least a year and a half now, and at least in terms of it being something that I actively should be participating in to try and see if there are other to see what new possibilities are there. So the conversation here around like innovative inclusion or more inclusive inclusion really stuck out for me from the standpoint of like I had a hard time finding a way to contribute and to actually feel included in the way that a lot of the conversations around inclusion were taking place. And right now, I think the big thing on my mind is what might alternatives look like if we were going to elevate the conversation in a meaningful way, and if we were going to have those alternatives, what's the underlying things that underpins inclusion, that underpins diversity, that can help us go from kind of the top level surface areas where we might feel excluded, and get into some more universal areas that honestly just allow more people to just be a part of every conversation, not as an insider outsider, but just as a person. Some of this is still a bit abstract, but I think that the whole field itself is a bit abstract. So I'm gonna allow that to just be here. For this conversation, I honestly do see it as a conversation. I love to be able for the two of us to be both real, authentic, and vulnerable with it. For you to ask me questions and for me to ask you questions. I don't see this being an interview. I think that what it really is an exploration, and just an open, honest dialogue around, not around diagnosing what the problems are, but really spending our energies and attention toward what might a new possibility, what might a future, what might a vision of this look like if things were going to change, if we're going to approach it differently. The last thing I think might be important for this conversation is that I've come to a place where it's like the current approach is not right or wrong. You know, it's what we have there, and I have a feeling that it's all the things. All the things are important. What's important to me through this conversation is to really look into and see how you think and how others, how we might be able to approach this a little bit differently, to add on, to be additive versus argumentative. You know, and so I really do want to put that in the context before we start the conversation. Is it okay with you if I also introduce just a few agreements, Lionel, before we get started, just to make sure we're good?
Yep.
Okay. So I think throughout this conversation, the first agreement, I want to make sure that it's okay with you. You can say yes or no to any of these here, and all that will do is that on my end, I'll just choose to play a little bit different. Okay. All right. So the first thing is that like I'm going to hide nothing and hold nothing back throughout this conversation. Is that something that's good with you?
Yes.
Okay, cool. My ultimate intention is to serve rather than please. And so with that there, like it's important to me that I don't come into it from a place of trying to make you like me or trying to make it like the comfortable conversation. Let's have the conversation that we really both set aside time to have. Is that something you could?
Yes, sure.
Okay. And then I think the last part here is that I think there's two here. One of them is that at this point in my life, I have a track record of having life-changing conversations, and I know you, so I feel like I would love to keep life-changing conversations on the table here. That the two of us might be able to have something that changes the way that we look at life going forward, or at some later point in life. Are you open to that being a possibility in this conversation?
Yes.
Okay. I think the last thing here is throughout the conversation, I'm going to lead the conversation, but you're in control. So I'll take it to places that seem interesting to me or move it in different areas, but you're ultimately in control of what you say, what you answer, where we go, if there are any assumptions that are being made, if there are places that you think are more interesting, like let's just go there, and we'll spend our time there. How does that sound to you? Is that something you agree to as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you would need in order to, like, this is what I need to be able to feel both safe and brave and just like really explore this with you here. is there anything else that you would need in order to make this a conversation where you can truly show up?
Yeah, if you're going to share this, would I be able to see what you're going to share first?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Then that's fine.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else?
Do I look good?
Yeah. Do you look good? Do you look good? It's as if I can answer that question. I'm sorry. Did you wake up today? Did you wake up today? Yeah. Like, let's go. Let's go. Game on. Game on. All right. Cool. So we're gonna, like, I love this. Let's have some fun with this here. Let's have some fun. So I think I want to start out here. Like, I want to start out here. Why did you decide? I posted something on Facebook. I said that I love to explore more inclusion, inclusion, and innovative inclusion. And you said, yeah, this sounds pretty interesting to me. I'd like to at least find out more. I'd love to just start off our conversation with, like, why did that call your attention? What is it that you feel you wanted to explore here?
Well, the way I look at things is what is sadly lacking in a lot of conversations is real depth as well as authenticity. So a lot of people say things from a place of, this is my point of view and that's it. And they're not willing to look at other people's points of view. The other thing is, most of the time people don't say what they really mean or what they're really thinking. There is a fear that if they say something, it might be used against them. Or it could also be that they feel that the more vulnerable they look, the weaker they look. And that's to do with looking good, looking successful, and all the other things that comes with trying to get ahead in life. So that's a lot of the work I do. It revolves around authentic communication, being true to yourself, and also being true to others while holding on to your own beliefs.
Yeah, and it's great because that's the context that you and I first met, right? Like, we had a dyad, we sat, and you organized something, and I was sharing it with people in my life the other day around, like, this is one of the places where I learned just how powerful it can be to be open, to be vulnerable, to have that depth and have that authenticity along the way. So I'm actually really happy that the two of us are speaking here, because you know this here. For you, when it comes to, you brought up a couple of, like, the different, like, barriers, some of them being, like, the way that we present ourselves, and being able to be potentially, if I'm remembering this right, the external perceptions that come along with vulnerability. From your perspective here, when it comes to conversations around inclusions, when it comes to the conversation that we're having here, how might we go about doing it in a way that we can actually foster? Let's just start off with just the depth first, like, just being able to, well, actually, let me slow that down, because I just made an assumption. I'm like, let me just pull one of these out. Depth, that's the one. There might actually have to be an order to this here. So if there was one thing that that myself or others that are listening to this, or, like, that go back and, like, take something from this here, could be focused on, out of all the ones there, like, what would you say is, like, the big thing to focus on first?
Well, I would say it's most important would be being able to accept other people's points of view. Because people are trapped very often in their minds and their own points of view. And they are so identified with it that they don't even know that they have a point of view. Life is just like that, but that's a point of view. So once you have that point of view being entrenched, you automatically exclude instead of include others. So those people who are in your point of view or follow your point of view automatically is your in group, and those who are not is automatically your out group.
So this is making me smile here. Like they don't like the point of viewpoint I get, but like they don't even know that they have a point of view. Like, can you elaborate a little bit on it? I get it, but like the question in my mind is like, how is that possible? What like and how and then the next part of it that's really important to me is like how do you and how do we look into ways to help them see that that they have a point of view if they don't even realize it in the first place?
Yeah, ask them the opposite, because sometimes people are in one of the work I do, it is asking people to look at the opposite of it. Because the way we do anything today, any point of view we have has an opposite, because we're comparing our experience against something we either want or don't want. So anything that's what we don't want is the enemy. Anything that we want is our friend. So if you come from a point of view, I only want good experiences in life, so bad experiences, so-called bad experiences, automatically becomes, no, I don't want that. However, as we all know, if you've been through life, some of the so-called negative experiences are the best learning points in our lives. It's painful, sometimes there's suffering, but it grows us. It's not necessarily fun going through them, but at the same time, going through them has made us what we are and where we have gone to. But people who are fixed in one point of view, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, they tend to forego or miss out on the lessons, or finding other ways that allows them to accept it more gracefully so that they won't have that much pain. Pain is inevitable in growth, but the suffering that they go through, the suffering I'm talking about is suffering in the mind. It's like, I don't want this, I don't want this, and they put themselves into a state of, I don't want this, and the negativity that surrounds them, their lives and everything else that comes with it just becomes unbearable for a lot of people. So for these people, they don't even know that they're in a state. They don't even know that they have a point of view that I don't want this. It's just like, life is like that. So if someone has grown up with money's always tight, for example, then anything that happens in his or her life will tend to come from a space of money is tight. And it can't phantom abundance, because even if they got, say, $1 million, $2 million, they're still going to come from a space of money is tight, better save it. So they won't be able to enjoy the experience of having $1 million or $2 million. So that's the point. So if someone is unable to contemplate or ponder the opposite of what they're looking at, then they're stuck in one point of view. So some people is like, I'm not good enough. And can you contemplate even what is good enough to you? Can you picture yourself being good enough? And if they can't, then they're stuck in one point of view.
All right, so can we play this out a little bit here? Right?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think at a certain point I grew up as a devil's advocate. So being able to see the opposite ended up being something that comes a little bit more naturally to me. I have to actually turn it to try and find productive means of it, right? So let's see this here. Because if I'm getting this right here, it's like when you only have one point of view, whether it's something that you've decided on or has been, more or less created in your world, and you don't even know that you have it there. It leads to you excluding other options and other people as a result of this, because it's the lens in which you're seeing things, right?
Yes.
So I would love to just like understand here, or just even just like explore with you here, how to really navigate the area of the word embrace is coming in my mind, like to embrace even the fact that there may be an opposite. Like how do we even start those kinds of conversations? Because like all of what we're talking about right now is completely race, gender, like sexual orientation agnostic, right? This is just like how people see the world, right?
Yeah.
Or how they see their world,
Yes.
So I'd be just really curious as to any mechanisms or things that we can have as even our intents as we're trying to navigate conversations where either ourselves, let's focus, I think, like now we'll do it with others, and then we'll bring it actually to ourselves, because I think they're both really important. Sometimes, assuming what you're saying, there's stuff that I don't even know that I see. Like how did you say we go about like navigating that?
I always ask the question, can you get the idea of it being the other way?
Can you get the idea of it being the other way?
If they can't even get the idea, that means they can't think in that way.
Yeah.
At that point in time.
So what do you do if that happens? Like what because I'm with you on that, and I can almost think of different instances where it's like, do we just try and break through? Do we end the conversation? And how do we
don't necessarily have to. First, you got to get the person to look at the other point of view. The person first must be able to see another point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be your opening. It's like, can you get the idea that things may not be that way? And if they go, yeah, okay. So if you are looking at it from money is tight, can you get the idea that money is in abundance? Which means yourself have to be clear what is the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it will, of course, be from your own point of view too. Because everybody's point of view is right according to them. And there's no real right points of view or wrong points of view. They're just different points of view. And in being able to accept all the different points of view is what inclusion is about.
I really like that. And I think going forward, I'm going to love to just kind of define what is inclusion. I think that's an important part of this whole thing. So, because that colors a lot for me here, right? For you, that if I'm getting this right, well, let me just ask you then. It might be exactly what you just said, but let me not put words in your mouth. For you, how do you define inclusion? What does true inclusion look like to you?
True inclusion, to me, means accepting people for who they are and whatever they choose, even if you don't agree. Even if you don't agree. I may not agree the person being of a certain religion or political slant, but I accept that that's who they are. That's inclusion. It's only if you can accept people for who they really are, what they believe in and all that, accept that they have their choice and you have yours, you can choose to not associate with them because you don't want to associate with those areas or those people, and that's fine. But you can exclude them from your circle, as in you choose, or rather you spend less time with them, but you don't go around thinking that they're the enemy. Mm-hmm. This happens a lot in politics. It happens sometimes in football fans, in sports.
Yep. And there's something here that's coming up for me a bit here, and I'd love to just explore this back and forth with you. I think I'm going to come up around here. So something it's been nagging at me. It's been nagging at me for a couple of months now. Is inclusion around just accepting, right? And I love to and the reason that it's nagging at me, it's like it feels like that allows us to tolerate one another, but not actually get to what I feel potentially what the benefits of inclusion are. And I'm making up in my head what the benefits of inclusion are. So to me, when I think about inclusion, it's a lot more of Lionel, I'm so happy you're here. We were all doing this, and now that you're a part of this conversation, I'm really interested in your thoughts. We can take things to a new level. We have a chance to do something that wasn't possible because you weren't here, right? For some, that's the vision that I see when I see kind of true inclusion. And so there's something around this being accepting it that feels like if we accept it, it'd be oh, hey, Lionel, I'm glad you're here. Let's continue, but there isn't that area of you're actually welcome. And I'll say it desired. Does that fit in your definition at all? Like, is there a different word of this here? Like, I'm not right in this at all. I just want to explore this because it's something that feels true to me.
In my books, acceptance is different from tolerance.
Hmm. Tell me more.
Acceptance means you accept who the person is, what they believe in, and what they choose to do, and respect their rights of choice. Tolerance is like, yeah, I don't like it, but because of whatever reason, either social, economic, or whatever, you just bear with it. Acceptance means you're open to it. Tolerance is like, okay, I'll just bear this and walk it through.
And as you say this, I'm realizing that the word that I would then use for what I'm describing is like appreciating, right?
Yeah.
So
Appreciating, respect, it's all the simple words, but they mean a lot when you come from a place of respecting that other people have and do have a right for choice. We are in a different place in society today than we were many, many years ago. Let's say 50 years ago. It's a different society then and now. We have a lot more avenues of speaking our minds, which means that polarizing views are a lot more out there than they used to be. We got more avenues of information, which means that we have to grow up and mature and be able to accept other points of view. Because if you don't accept other points of view, you are actually shutting yourself out from an experience of something else other than what you already know. So that would be the benefit of inclusion in my books.
So like, if I'm getting you right, the benefit of inclusion there, it's like a richness of experience because you're getting beyond what you already know. Is that it?
Yeah. Even if it is something that is uncomfortable, because change is uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's something that you don't agree with, and you go through it, and then you're like, okay, I didn't really like that, but what did I learn from there? It's not easy. It takes a lot of self-inspection and self-responsibility to be able to do that. People need to be able to go into themselves and look and accept that they themselves have a point of view that other people don't agree with.
So I'm with you on that one, right? Like, because I some time ago, intuitively, I was like, there's something about we need to. My thought was, if I was okay with myself, then I wouldn't feel like I needed to blame someone else for something that went wrong. It was like, you know what? Like, I'm good with me. This person must have whatever it is. I can do something different on my part, or I am completely within my own means to change my scenario around it, to change that around it. So, and I'll also say this here: when you were saying, you said that it's about respecting that other people also have a choice. And what came to mind to me is that whenever I think about choice now, I think about choice and the word freedom, like they're like tied together to me. Of all things, I'm talking freedom, and I'm like they're tied. But choice and freedom seem like they're very related to me. And I think that freedom is the exercise of choice. And there's an element in what you're saying there. It's like if inclusion is respecting other people's choices, it almost feels like then by an extension of that, based on some of my words, the inclusion would also be respecting other people's freedoms within there.
Yes.
So
but at the same time, we have to be really careful there, because sometimes respecting other people's freedom, see, if you take it to the logical extension of it, if you accept people are free to do whatever they choose to, you may be opening up to that, okay, maybe they want to go around killing people randomly.
Yeah.
They have that choice too. So now, where do we draw the line? Do we include these people or we exclude these people? So
can we have that conversation? Because like it comes up a lot. I'm like, I want true inclusion, and they're like, well, and usually like I'll hear something that's like, well, what about this group over here? Like, we absolutely can't have that. And I would love to be able to understand. For me, true inclusion would be able to find some sort of way to live not live with it, but to bring this um, into a collective existence. And at the same time, as I say that, I also know that there's also limits to what I choose to include. So, but I love to just call that out, because I think a lot of times we run into this here, like in like the what if scenarios. It's just like,
yeah, yeah. So if you talk about true inclusion in my books, one of the work that I do is about boundaries. See, when we violate people's boundaries, we very often do it unknowingly, but it's the people who knowingly violate boundaries, then they're intruding on people, they're stomping all over it. We have many examples of politicians and countries doing that today. Yeah, I shall not name any of these countries. But, but when you do that, you see, it presupposes, when you talk about inclusion, it presupposes in my book that people are mature, they have responsibility, and they respect others. If these are not in place, true inclusion can never take place. Because the rules are there for people who cannot respect boundaries, who cannot respect others, and who do not have an ethical way of living internally. Rules are meant to be a substitute for ethical behavior. There are many countries, Japan is one of them, you don't need fines like they do in Singapore to keep the country clean, because ethical behavior is inculcated in their culture. If they see trash on the floor, they'll pick it up and throw it away, even if it's not theirs. So rules are in place to protect the collective from people who cannot and choose not to respect boundaries.
all right. So there's something here. I want to play this out. I'm trying to see. There's an element here of, okay, there's the rules. Let me see if I'm getting it here. When like inclusion goes up into the point of when the rules start. Like after, like when the rules start, that's we've kind of changed the game a bit there. Am I getting that right there? Where it's like we all have boundaries, we have different things, and there's a certain set of rules that are also in place to make sure that, you know, these are the hardest boundaries that are out there. These are the greatest collective set of boundaries that we've all decided on. And it's almost like within those boundaries of the rules, that's where inclusion should live. And inclusion shouldn't have to take on the burden of going beyond the rules themselves.
Yeah, well, it can, but it requires that the person is conscious enough and has an own ethical compass within, that even if they're outside of the rules or outside of the jurisdiction of the rules, they'll maintain it. Because why some people take controlled drugs outside of Singapore is because they're allowed to. But if you have an internal idea, because it's a point of view, it's a choice too, that I don't want to take any kind of controlled drugs, then even if I'm somewhere where it's available, I won't do it. So the rules are meant to protect the society based on what the society agrees best for society. However, we talk about inclusion. I believe what you're trying to do here is talking about including those groups that are either pushed out far or are on the fringe of the actual collective conversation.
Yeah, can we explore that a little bit? I would love to see, I'm open to finding out what I'm trying to do here. I know that the bud of something is important here, and I'm engaging in conversation to explore that further. I think for me, there's an element of this here that, to be honest, there's an element here when it comes to this conversation in general, that if I had an agenda, And I think I really like how you said everyone has a point of view. So I'm going to call it all out just in case this is part of that point of view, and I'm just too close to see it. It wasn't until very recently that I started to become aware that of why I felt so far removed from the conversations that were currently taking place around inclusion. The conversations that I see typically revolve around gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or religion. That's and like those are the ones that are typically come up on my radar. And I think the thing for me that was shown up that led me to follow this path is that for me I'm a Black American, right? In America, I'm an African American, and I make a distinction for myself between being Black and African American because I'm first generation out of Africa, as opposed to having being a descendant of someone who was in America beforehand. And I think there's a lot of times where the conversations would be where, generally speaking, my path in life and put me closer to the inside crowd than the outside crowd. Like they would talk about different statistics and they would say 2 to 3% of all the people in this field are African American. My last two roles that I was in, the last two industries that I was in the 2 to 3%. And so I honestly think I have a different relationship with when I hear stats around the Black community, when I hear stats around different elements of things, and I'm just trying to own the fact that part of it is a privilege that I have because I ended up playing the game. I ended up playing the game the way others didn't, apparently, and somehow the choices in life led to me to be consistently one of those. Right. In fact, I say that I feel 2016 was the first year I felt like I had to be a Black man. Up until then, I was able to just be Nemo. And I think a large part of what's bringing this conversation on is in the way that things are currently constructed, I've been able to spend most of my life in the 2 to 3%. I've been able to find success in a system that has not necessarily rewarded things based on the different delineations that people are talking about. And so I think a part of me is within this, there's also other ways to be successful. I think that it's great to do. I think it's really important that we're doing the broad-based work that's being done right now based on the various individual genders and such, those different identities. But I'm also really curious around what might be just underlying principles such that regardless of the environment that you're in, regardless of if you choose to identify with the surface level, I'm going to call it surface level for this conversation, but if you choose to identify through the lens of what others have chosen to divide you into, that you can still have a place and create a more inclusive environment. I think that's really it. Because right now, I don't go to events targeted toward African Americans, or Black. You won't see me there. In Singapore, I'm actually spending more time there, but I actually relate to this group here more because they're people who left their country to come be in a place here. And if I was 2 to 3% in those other areas, I'm 0.2 to 0.3% here, So there's a different thing that I relate to them around. And yeah, I just think that it's very odd to me that someone who has consistently been one of the few or one of the only throughout a lot of my life, that these conversations feel like not a safe place. These conversations that are designed to help make things easier for me and others feel like they are only furthering levels of divide, only letting us entrench ourselves more in certain ways they're bringing on kind of a certain level of groupthink. I'm like, why is inclusion such a dangerous topic? Why there's a certain way that you're supposed to go about it and so on and so forth. So that's really what brought me into this conversation. That's really what's stemming this thing here, because I'm with you. on authenticity, depth, vulnerability, being able to know what your point of views are. And at the same time, I'm just confused why that isn't the place that, that we're starting from, you know? Um, and, uh, and yeah, I want to make sure that, you know, I appreciate you allowing me to bring some of my context into this conversation. But I want to make sure that we're exploring that and understanding, extending, how do we create the space for that as well?
Yeah, I get that. So the way I look at it, or rather what I see, my observations are, a lot of these conversations around inclusion were set by people who are the majority rather than the minority. So if I am the majority, I wouldn't feel and know what it is like to be the minority. I wouldn't feel what it is like to be a minority in a place striving to get through the language, the culture, the whatever it is, or the socioeconomic status, whatever that is. Because then I would go like, all right, I am going to include them, but only if it fits my worldview. Because I don't have the experience as the majority, what it is like to be the minority in that place. So for an example, Singapore is a very good cosmopolitan place. We are pretty accepting of a lot of people, but in general, the Chinese are the majority. We won't know what it is like to live in a majority Chinese community if I'm out of it. I won't know because I'm the majority. It's the same like what you say, that you are the 2 to 3% in. You don't know what it's like to be a black man, which is the 97% necessarily. I'm not saying you do or don't, but
no, I appreciate you saying it. Like I have to call myself out here, and I don't, and I say call myself out because it feels that way. But I want to bring attention to it. I want to be honest about it so that it's no longer a hidden lens. But it's like the point of view that I have is actually as a point of view as being in the 2 to 3%. I don't know what it's like to be in the 97% because I haven't felt like I've been 97%.
Yep. And very often the people who set the agenda never ask the other 90+%, how can we include you? We go, most of them go, we'll include you, but on these terms. Because there's still because people in the majority don't want to become the minority.
Yeah.
Or they don't want the majority to be diluted. That's my observation, my point of view.
Yeah, this is I love this here because I've been using the terms insiders and outsiders instead of majority and minority, but I think, you know, this adopting it for this conversation, I'm seeing that, right? And there's an element of it where it's like, and thank you, because it's like it's helped me get to like what's the core, because I feel like there's a project that's going to come out of all this. I feel like there's a set of workshops or a set of like conversations that's not going to be about what should the conversations be, but they're just going to model what we're talking about. You know, I think it's important. Like I appreciate you calling out to help me see my lens, that POV. And so let me ask you in this case here. There's the majority, right? For me, I get caught as one of the minorities that is often associated in some way, at least in my mind, maybe I associate myself with the majority, right? And so there's this element there of being able to create space from, like, I guess that's the thing. Like there are a lot of people out there that I find, and living here has been really fun. Because there's so many people who are outside of their like normal environment where they would be the majority. And I think it's just a very interesting place to see how do we create space. And as I said, I'm like, is this a bad thing to ask? Is this a bad question to ask? But how do we create space? I'm not entirely sure what it is. I want to say like for both the majority and the minority, right? To really be able to come in as just like a group. and that feels different to me. Like, I find myself gravitating. I'll use myself as an example here. Feel free to like explore things through me if that makes sense. And if it also feels like it's too close for it to be like more broadly applied, let me know too, and we can just go back out a little bit. But I'm willing to put my experience out here to see like maybe we can explore this and see what's there. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So so I was thinking earlier, right, like majority and minority, like how do we just come together? Because, for example, I find myself going to a lot of women's events. Like I just enjoy being in that environment. I love learning more about what's going on, and I really want to be an ally and continue along that. I also get very upset oftentimes when I hear different injustices toward women, and as someone who's like believes so strongly in inclusion, there's very little space. There's very little, and in that environment, I'm seen as a male, right? And so I think that's fine. Like that's the environment that's been created, and it has a very specific purpose for a specific group of people, right? However, it still feels that I'm just using this as an example, but I feel like it kind of continues. If Nemo was traveling to any other group other than, the African American group, let's say, or actually not really, but the 2 to 3% group, there would be that feeling, right? So from your experience, and let me know if any of this needs any clarification, but from your experience, what might be a way that we can construct a conversation that would still be beneficial to a certain group of people, however they choose to identify, and be able to make it so that whoever ends up showing into that conversation can get to understand that point of view from that person's point of view, to choose to and respect that person's choice without having to subjugate their own point of view or their own choice. Right? Let's put it that way. If the question feels dangerous to me, so I think I might be onto something. That's how I look at it. I'm like, do I want to ask this? Okay, then it's probably the question that I should ask.
Well, I think the most important thing is setting the context to the conversation. What's the purpose of that in the first place? Is it to result in agreement? Is it to result in understanding? Is it to result in more information? We need to know the context of what it is. In dyads, when we run dyads, the whole context of it is to result in understanding. That's all. You don't have to agree. You don't have to say yes or no to it. You think what you think about it, but you learn to understand that this is it for that person on this topic. Say you talk about money. So in the instructions we use for money, for example, could be, tell me something about you and money. So the person could tell the whole life story about how money is tough. And the other person sitting over there goes, I don't have that problem. But I understand now why you think that way, because of all your life experience. So to be able to do that is key in resulting in inclusion, because people need to be able to see the other person's story behind to where they came from and how they got there. Very often we want only the short, quick 3-second vibe. That's it. Okay, any more than that, it's like, hi, how are you? And walk off. Just wait for the, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, this is as you're saying this, it illuminates a lot, right? It's like in a lot of contexts, we're not giving ourselves the time to understand someone else's story. I've been to a dyad, and I'm going to one in just 3 days here. Like I know it's like 3 hours, and I can sit there and just like and understand more about myself, but also be heard, be seen, be visible, and if like I'll look to and be accepted, and I think in the be accepted part, it's like there's an element here, and I'll reflect this because I don't know if I've ever shared it with you, but there's an element of that I feel in the dyads, and I'm so happy that I can come back to one. It's like the be accepted part is both an external acceptance from whoever the partner is, but also just like a little bit, like a lot more of an internal acceptance. Like, okay, like
Yeah.
I just said this out loud,
Yeah.
and it didn't crush me, and I'm still here. And the person had the same reaction to this statement as a statement I said about, like, ice cream and gummy bears. Like it's just a statement, and it's just something that is true for me from there. Um, we talk about dyads here, and I don't know if this will ever be shared more broadly, but just in case it is, would you like to like share a little bit about like what dyads are? Because like that really, like, I've experienced it as a really powerful tool to help bring out the depth, the authenticity, the vulnerability, and I think that it might be for anyone, like, I think it might just be a tool that would be useful to have a better understanding around.
Yeah. So as you said, the dyad is a communication tool. It presupposes one person listens and the other person speaks. The person who is speaking only about him or herself, his or her own experience. And the listening person, the listening partner's only goal is to sit, listen, and do the best to understand. No interjections, no interruptions, no, yeah, my mother was doing that too, that kind of thing. Yeah, you may have had that experience, but you don't say it, because saying it almost automatically invalidates what the person shared. Is, yes, I know some people like to do that to gain affinity, or they actually feel affinity with the other person, but doing that actually kind of makes the person's share less important than your own experience. So when you are quiet and listening to the other person and doing your best to understand and accepting whatever they say, you are making their experience more important than yours currently in that point in time. And that's what's lacking in conversations today.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why I feel that inclusion, or the conversations around inclusion, is not that, because people don't take the time to sit down, do the best to listen and understand. That's all you need to do. Well, the old Zen saying, right? You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You listen more than you speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this is very interesting here, because like I would encourage anyone that gets a chance to come participate in the dyad to do it. I keep coming back for a reason, and I have coaches in my life, I have communities in my life, I have masterminds in my life, but like the dyad has a very, very special place for me, because it's one of those. There's something that also occurs here that I'll speak to that I felt from your conversations we've had. Then we'll start wrapping up here. But there's something that occurs as a participant, to know that you're also not alone.
Yep.
Like throughout the conversations, I don't think there's ever been a dyad where like I said something, and the dyad is just that 2-person conversation, right? But I don't think there's ever been a time where I've said something and the person said, "Yep," like, and they said the same thing, and I said something and they said the same. Like, they're completely, totally different experiences that are coming out, completely, totally different words and stories that are coming out, and all beside us are other people going through their own dyads, and there's something around knowing that, like, that extends beyond just 2 people. And that is that I am amongst others someone else who has thoughts around money, maybe good, maybe bad, maybe positive, maybe empowering, maybe disempowering. That's probably where I was coming from, or neutral. But like, there's an element of like, I'm not alone in this that is really powerful, even though there's only 2 people going through it at the same time.
Yep.
So let's do this here. Like, are there any other thoughts that you have around inclusion? Any other thoughts you'd like to put out there? And then again, assuming that this goes out to people, I want to make sure they also know how they can get in touch with you afterwards, just because I feel like there's a lot of value in this conversation. I wouldn't want to leave that out. So why don't we start first with like any other thoughts, any final thoughts, any wrap-up thoughts that you think for me and others that are looking to create more inclusive spaces, and really allow the depth, authenticity, and vulnerability to come through, is there anything that we should be having in mind?
Yeah, so that is exactly what is needed, to create spaces where people feel safe enough to express what they have to say in a safe environment where there are no repercussions. That's how we start inclusion in my books. So if someone's going to say something and I react right away, the person is not going to feel safe to want to share more. And automatically I've excluded the other person from the conversation. But if I go, okay, tell me more, that's a very good tool to use. Tell me more.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Tell me more. So let me employ that right now.
Yeah.
Lionel, tell me more.
Yeah. So automatically it's an invitation for me to share more about what this is about. Because it automatically puts me having to think about what I think about it, rather than you telling me what I should say.
Yeah.
So that's, in this way, you are now including me in the conversation. Just, I have a bad life, Okay, tell me more. When you use tell me more, you need to first mean it too. You don't say tell me more if you don't mean it, because it'll come across as I don't want to know anyways. So if you have the curiosity to know about somebody else, tell me more. And that's it. There's nothing else that you need to do. The rest of it is just listening and accepting. That's their experience. Yours may be different, and you are totally okay if you don't agree with it. You don't have to vehemently tell the person, "No, I don't agree with you. No, money's not that way," whatever that is. But it usually happens. That's how conversations get cut, and that's how inclusion gets stopped.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right. So, like, this has been a really enlightening conversation for me. I'm really just wanted to say thank you for being open to explore this with me and to help me understand even what help me understand what I'm trying to find out, and to be inclusive in the way that we even had this conversation. I think it's important that we model the things that we want to see out in the world. So I appreciate you really showing up from that level of integrity throughout, and giving me an experience of something different. I'm looking forward to seeing you this week at your next dyad. Before we wrap up here, just in case someone does watch this here, is there anything that you would like to share with anyone who doesn't know you or may want to spend more time getting to know you?
Well, we do a lot of work with helping people looking to have their life go better, whether it's life, relationships, money, material world, spiritual world, inner, outer world, any of those things that help themselves move from where they are to where they want to be. That's the kind of work that we do. So we do it with workshops, we do it with community events. Sometimes we do it with one-on-one sessions if people would like to do that too. So it's really inclusive because it's you. Tell me what you want to work on. I don't tell you what you should be working on because it's your life, not mine. My role is to help you make it go better.
You mentioned a we in this here. Who is we? So that anyone, if they're
we is me, my wife, and we, because we do this work together. So that's why I use we. It's collective, and we is also my company, Maven.
So can you repeat that? I lost you just for a second there.
Yeah. So we is me and my wife, but at the same time, we is also my company, Maven Communications. So it is MAVEN COMMS nemoashong.com. So anybody who would like to know what we do, feel free. We are always open to conversations.
Awesome. That I would expect nothing less. So I appreciate that you put it out there explicitly. All right, then, Lionel. Thank you so much. Thank you for making this come to life. I've grown so much through this year, and I'm looking forward to what we both create from this as well. And I'll see you in just a few days at this diet.
Right.
I'm ready to go down a little bit more myself.
Wonderful. I'll see you soon then.
Until then.
All the best. Take care.